Hello, welcome to the Sedona Community Forum. I'm Linda Shook, the Associate Director of the Sedona Center and the Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute here in Sedona, Verde Valley. This program today is a part of the Lifelong Learning Division of Yavapai College.
And I'm Paul Friedman, an OLLI volunteer, and we're co-hosting this series of programs with local leaders whose work is especially affected by and helping our community respond to this pandemic situation.
Our aim today is to give you a backstage look at local leaders and the decisions they're making during these very unusual times.
Our guest of honor today is Charles Husted, the Chief of the Sedona Police Department. Chief, more than a month ago, the governor of Arizona issued a stay-at-home order to our community members, and the mayor of Sedona asked tourists to postpone their visits to our town. I assume these new restrictions have influenced the law enforcement activities of your police officers, and I imagine this has been a demanding period for you. Could you tell us about making and implementing the decisions necessitated by this health crisis?
Absolutely. So actually, I'll take you to, I would say, about 2 weeks before the governor's executive order, when the pandemic started to significantly influence our country. It was pretty clear that this was not something that was just going to disappear overnight. And so, having been in law enforcement for a long, long time, I do understand that there's long-term impacts anytime that a crisis hits, even if it's something that resolves itself. The impact on law enforcement sustains, because we have to make sure that things don't pop back up, for example. So well before the governor's orders, we had already internally started taking measures to use protective equipment in the field, the hand sanitizers, the masks, the gloves. We started to kind of discuss, what does that look like? What changes do we need to make internally so that we, for example, limit the amount of contact we have with one another? So we had started those plans before the executive order came out. And actually, I want to say it was at least a week before the executive order was given, our mayor here in Sedona, she had foresight to issue an order of her own directing much of what the governor's orders did and added to. And so we had already started that process here in Sedona as far as evaluating the impact on our ability to police and keep the community safe and to serve the community just as we do without a pandemic. And so the challenges immediately were, how do you enforce restrictions, you know, that people are not accustomed to? So you have emergency proclamations being made. How do you enforce that? And really, it's, you know, like any time that you have something that changes so drastically, it really needs to start out with education. And it's not about this heavy hand, the stereotypical mindset of law enforcement that all we do is write tickets and handcuff people. That is absolutely not what contemporary law enforcement is about at all. And so we really took an educational position on it, especially with this health crisis. It really is making decisions that protects everybody. It's not about, you know, going 90 miles an hour in a 35 zone that just has impact at that moment. This is something that impacts the entire city, the entire region, our entire state. And so getting people educated to understand the level of potential harm that this virus has, and our obligations as human beings in society to take measures to try to protect one another, and just let people know that these orders, the emergency proclamation, for example, that our mayor started out with, it wasn't about trying to stifle business or you know, do anything negative towards people. It was just about, let's try to take some proactive approaches to protect our community. You know, nobody at any time would want to stifle business in Sedona. That's what keeps everything going. And you know, we live in this amazing part of the world, and you know, and you want to share that. And so these early orders were really about trying to take some proactive measures. And so we had to figure out, what does that look like for us? Because again, being in law enforcement for 32 years, I've never had to deal with a pandemic in this regard. I've dealt with a lot of other crises, and I've relied on those skills that I've learned over the years to apply to this incident. But this is a new thing for our country, and we had to adapt and pivot as public safety professionals to provide a level of security, but also, like I said, that educational approach up front, just to talk to people and let them know, here's what the executive orders are, and this is what it means, and this is why, right? Understanding the why behind things, the intent, really seems to work. People understand that, you're right, I need to take some measures to protect myself, my customers, my community. So that's the initial part, and we've just added to internally, and in regards to our preparation, we've added internally to our protocols to keep our officers, our staff safe, because not only are we keeping them safe, we're by making sure they don't get infected, we're protecting the community. We certainly wouldn't want an officer to go to a call or make a traffic stop who is infected with the virus and spread it to somebody else. So that's what we've been doing, and we've been scrambling a little bit, but like I said, flexibility and being able to pivot quickly is the hallmark of a good organization, especially a good policing organization, and that's what we got here. It's about that contemporary approach to public safety.
Yeah, well, thank you. I can imagine that it is an unusual set of circumstances. There are people who are on a lot of the restrictions, a lot of the what's been mandated is vague, is less concretely legislated and clearly delineated. So I imagine that there are times when you have to ask, sometimes when you, as you say, educate and suggest, and sometimes insist. And all the other departments in the country are facing the same situation. Is there training or guidelines, advice available throughout the law enforcement networks that you connect with? Do you connect with other police departments in Yavapai County or Coconino County, or even more widely? How do you manage the ambiguities of this situation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those professional connections are there. I meet virtually, through Zoom or some other type of interface in the computer with all of the regional law enforcement executives every week. So the Coconino County side, and then also the Yavapai side. And so we have conversations about that. We also, I connect with other law enforcement professionals within Arizona through the Arizona Association of Chiefs of Police, and more broadly, I participate in the International Chiefs of Police Association, ACP. Connected through them. A lot of information is put out through that organization, and then also an organization called the Police Executive Research Forum, and they're more or less a kind of a think tank that really focuses on best practices for public safety law enforcement in our country, but also throughout the world. And so absolutely, definitely connected locally, regionally, and nationally and internationally, trying to figure out what best practices make sense, and trying to digest that information to figure out what applies here, right? So Sedona is very different than any other city, just like other cities are different than us, right? And so the Sedona Police Department has to be the best police agency for our community. I'm not trying to be the best police agency for Flagstaff or Scottsdale or anywhere else. I just want to make sure we are the best for our community. And so really trying to take that information and see how do we apply those practices here. For example, our demographic last time I checked about a year ago, our median age was about 58 years and older here in Sedona. So just add a couple years onto that, and per the CDC, a bulk of our population is in an at-risk population for having severe complications as it relates to COVID-19. And so, you know, that's unlike a lot of other communities. And so we have to take that into consideration in how we, you know, recommend things in the community as far as taking preventative measures, about our stance of taking preventative measures, very intentional about that, like with protective equipment, but then also in regards to the education piece. You know, we live in a day and age where you know, cell phones pretty much makes everybody an expert, and so people are tapped into news stations and websites and doctors, and everybody seems to have an opinion of what the right way to deal with this virus and what we should do and shouldn't do. And you know, I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not that person, and so the CDC, all their recommendations, that is their job for our country, is to work with the World Health Organization to identify best practices based on experts in these fields. And I have to trust that they know what they're talking about. It's like if I had to go in for open heart surgery, I'm certainly not going to tell that person, well, make sure you do it like this. And I got to trust they know what they're doing. They're going to do the best they can. And so that's been a little bit of a challenge, is getting people that disagree with, well, the CDC's wrong, this is the right answer. And it's like, I'm not sure what to tell you. I mean, I don't know how you know you're right, but I'm going to go with what the experts say, and that's the approach we've taken, and that's the approach we have to take. Otherwise, there'll be complete chaos, and you know, nobody will know really which way is up. And so we have to have some sort of set of rules and do put practices in place that are best practice for policing, but also for protecting our community and encouraging our community. And then lastly, what I'll say on that is being neighborly. You know, I am connected through nextdoor.com in Sedona, and we have about, I don't know, 3,100 of our 10,000 population that's connected. So it's a percentage, and really talking with our community about being neighborly and what are we doing in Sedona. Like I said, we want to be the best police agency we can for the city of Sedona. That's why I don't connect via, say, for example, Facebook, because I don't right now need to communicate with people in some other state or city or country about what they're doing, because I can't do anything about that. I really want to connect our citizens to make sure we're on the same page and do whatever we can to keep ourselves safe, but also have a vibrant community. And so it's really about trying to figure out how do we work together. A lot of people online have seen the hashtag Stronger Together. That to me is not just something to say. I've found out over the years in policing that truly is where we need to be. You know, the police department cannot be the end be all for everything. We have to work in partnership with our community and collaborate, and we truly are stronger together in that regard.
Yes, we certainly are. And I've seen your postings on the neighborhood network, internet network, and they've been very appreciated. I'm really grateful and impressed by them. As you say, this is enforcing a stay-at-home policy, and people are in each other's presence much more than they ordinarily would be, which is unfortunate economically. And it also places a social burden. Have you seen any rise in calls regarding domestic disputes or disputes between neighbors, or is there any reverberations of the stress and strain caused by this shelter-in-place policy?
Yeah, absolutely. And the last number I heard for our state in regards to domestic violence, that calls were up, I think almost 25% incidence of domestic violence for our state. I don't have a specific percentage to give you for the city of Sedona. Sorry, turn off my ringer. I don't have a specific plan for Sedona, but I have been watching the stats in regards to call types during the pandemic, and absolutely, family disturbances, disturbances in the community have all increased. The incidents of theft have increased a little bit, and so it is a different time where I was telling my wife that the extent of how long people are going to be staying home, and I just remarked that I think this time will be where a lot of families either grow stronger or they break apart, because people are not used to being enclosed like that. And so what I've been telling folks, and I appreciate your connection on Nextdoor, so it's through Nextdoor and through other avenues, telling folks we live in an amazing part of the world. So get out and enjoy this part of the world, but just be responsible, right? The distancing, go for a hike and just enjoy that. And yes, you can still go for a hike with your neighbors. You don't have to hold hands with your neighbor. Just go for a hike and be responsible and in interactions with your friends and neighbors like you normally would, but just be extra careful. And people can still do those things. But because there's so many different media reports and different things going on, this pandemic has had an influence on anxiety with folks, and so they're just honestly afraid of their house. And it's just, that's a very normal reaction for some, and it's just, trying to get that word out to others that if we take reasonable practices, we certainly can be safe. And people need to come out and participate. Yes, back to the crime piece. For example, with the restaurants shutting down, the non-essential businesses shutting down, we've been asked by a number of organizations throughout the city to try to keep an extra eye on their property, and we do that. Obviously, we're a small organization, we can't be everywhere that we want to be at once, and so there has been an uptick in some of those instances, the disturbance, and like I said, the theft instances. And we have to work those the best that we can, and try to, again, it's about educating and trying to get folks to change their perspective and handle this anxiety differently than letting it lead to frustration and anger and whatnot. We had I'm sure you saw it on Nextdoor, where we had somebody in our community write a very nasty note in regards to a car that had out-of-state plates, and their assumption was that whoever owned this car was not from the area and didn't belong there, and they needed to get out. And it used to be very colorful language would tell them to get out and stay away. And turns out that that out-of-state car belonged to somebody that just moved here. And so really, whoever the author that let that frustration and anger boil over the point. They clearly were not using reasonable sense in that. I got to believe that they're normally not that kind of person. At least I hope so. But so I think that's part of it. Is it's not just us, the police department. It's all of us getting communication out to folks and really trying to help people change that perspective. Yes, we need to be cautious. We need to be smart as to how we move forward. It doesn't mean we have to allow all that anxiety to build up inside of us and come out and manifest itself in a negative way.
Yeah, well, that note of we're all in this together and we can see this through, but it will take an extra dose of patience and consideration and flexibility. That's the principles that you're working within the police department and encouraging the whole community to keep those in mind.
Yeah.
Well, lots we could talk about, but our time is just about up. So I want to thank you, Chief Charles Husted. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Husted, but it's fine. I when I was younger, because it looks like Husted, people used to say, "Oh, I got busted by Husted," but it's technically it's pronounced Husted, but it's fine. Charles is fine.
Okay, Chief Charles.
Yeah, very good.
And thanks for sharing with us your activities in law enforcement on the whole, and especially during these past couple of critical months.
Yeah.
We're grateful for the frank and thoughtful glimpses you've given us into how your department is responding to the challenges you face.
Can I just add one more thing? I know we're closing, but if I could just add one more thing.
Please do, yes, by all means.
Yeah, if I can just say this to whoever's going to watch the video here in Sedona, is I hear feedback. Okay, here we go. Got it. So we absolutely are going to be okay. We are going to get through this, and the sky is not falling. The world is not coming to an end. Look outside, it's beautiful. We're going to be okay. We just need to work together, and we need to be patient as we move forward and see what the new normal looks like. But it's going to be okay, I assure you.
Well, I appreciate those supportive, encouraging, inspiring words. And thank you for those, and thank you for everything you're doing with your contemporary approach to law enforcement. It makes us partners, and we're very grateful for that. Linda?
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will continue this series of interviews with local leaders called the Sedona Community Forum. You may access all of the programs that the interviews that we've conducted on the OLLI website, on our Facebook, or the fastest way would be simply to go to our YouTube channel, OLLI at Sedona Verde, and you'll be able to see all of the leaders like the chief today telling us about their decisions during this very unusual time. Thank you.